And welcome back to day 3 of Survivor 46 and 46. I just finished watching Survivor Africa. The reunion is playing in the background. This reunion I actually have never watched from beginning to end. And I guess I won't be doing that today either because it's going to be playing in the background. I've got a lot of thoughts on this season, especially this time around. But I'm joined today by Julia Rowe, a member of the online Survivor community. Julia, you being a younger person, not being alive when the season first aired, what was your first experience watching this season, and how has it changed throughout the years?
Yeah, so I'm a Lex truther, but I started watching Survivor very late. Like you said, I wasn't born when Survivor first aired. The first full season I remember watching and vividly taking in was uh, David versus Goliath. And I love David versus Goliath, obviously, great season to start on. And with that, I realized right away I wanted to be a completionist. So I hunkered down, got CBS All Access, and started watching Survivor. Borneo was good. I enjoyed it. Australian Outback was a snooze. But for some reason, when I got to Africa, something just clicked with me. And I haven't looked back since. Yeah. I've since then I've probably watched it 3 or 4 more times through, so a lot in a kind of short span of time.
I think this is my 5th or 6th time watching it since it aired. And I'll say this, and I'm going to kind of jump the gun with this. I'm going to end up ranking Africa higher than Australian Outback. For the first time in however long the show's been on, I actually am going to put it above it because this is another season where I was able to just get through it so fast, and I never felt like it was really dragging on. There's maybe 2 episodes in the middle where it's okay, I think the Brandon Frank vote outs, it's okay, yeah, but even then, it's still fun because of little moments like Frank and Brandon going on their date. And I have opinions on the 2 of them and the edit that we got. But Africa was actually a lot of fun. And yes, I just finished watching the final tribal, and those people were pissed off. A lot of them were pissed off. Brandon changed his vote because Ethan said that he didn't. And Brandon, we're gonna touch on Brandon a lot, but
he was right for that. He was right for that. I would have done the same.
Was he? Was he?
You don't slam someone on their own.
He didn't slam him. He just gave him an answer. He didn't slam him. He didn't say you suck, Brandon, which he does. Brandon was not fun. And I probably would have said the same thing. I would have said that it was so Brandon.
I think I need to change my name to Brandon Truther.
No, you don't, because we start this season, and yes, we have the we have the alliance of the old folk, the Gen Xers and the Boomers, because that's how old this season is. We have the Boomers and the Gen Xers, and Brandon, he's so annoying. He's so annoying. Just the way that he clowns most of the old folks. And yes, I understand that Frank, I don't feel like I would vibe with Frank either. But just some of the things that he would do and some of the things that he would say, and then him, celebrating Lindsay being gone, even though he's sitting at Tribal crying about Lindsay leaving. And he's, I'm so glad she was so emotional, and this, that, and the other. The fact that he flipped on an alliance back in a time where flipping didn't really happen and it didn't really benefit him. He's actually the worst. I don't like Brandon at all.
I just urge everyone to look at why back then people despised Brandon but praised Jeff Varner. Was it because Brandon was just more openly?
Stop. Nope, because Rich was more openly, and I feel like people didn't like Rich because of the alliance thing. I don't think it had anything to do with that. But I just feel like, and it's crazy because I don't want to root for Frank at all during the season, and especially during his boot episode. It's okay, yes, I'm glad I'm glad that I can root against Frank here because I do not like this man. But when it comes down to Frank versus Brandon, I find myself to this day still taking Frank's side, which is insane because I know the reason that Frank doesn't like Brandon. It's crazy.
And it's like Brandon.
What's up?
What? Nothing.
I didn't hear what you said.
Then it's the same reason you don't like Brandon.
Oh, stop it. Okay. So we have them. The other person, and your name speaks to it, is Lex. Starting off the season, he starts off, in my opinion, very poorly with the way that him, Tom, and Ethan react to the whole Clarence thing. And for me, it felt very uncomfortable. And then as it progressed, Lex kind of chilled out for a little bit and let Big Tom be Big Tom. And then we get to the Kelly votes for where T-Bird votes for Lex and he blames it on Kelly and he goes on this weird witch hunt because he got 2 votes at a tribal and loses his mind and says we have to get rid of the snake. There's a snake. I don't like people that are that are untrustworthy or whatever. And it's like, dude, you got 2 votes. You got 2 votes. It's all right. And then he just goes on this witch hunt and he targets the wrong person. And he even says there's a moment where he's talking to Tom or somebody and he says, I trust my gut and my gut's telling me Kelly. And it's like, well, your gut's wrong because it was T-Bird. Why do you like Lex so much? Only in this season. We're not talking about All-Stars.
Not talking about All-Stars.
Yeah, not yet.
When it comes to me, when I play these games, there's 2 words I use to describe myself. Team TV. And you can't deny that Lex was not great TV. I think he was, although loud at sometimes, arrogant at others, flat out wrong. I think he was an interesting narrator for the season. I thought he provided good insight, and I think his trajectory throughout the game and just watching it as an outside observer was fantastic. I think he was a good person to root for and root against at different times, and I just fell in love with how he played the game.
No, Lex is a fun character, and I think that's more the reason that they brought him back because he was a fun character, and that trio is very fun in general. I do enjoy the trio for what they were. They all had their different quirks. They all had their very different 2001 quirks, which we'll touch on a little bit. I've just never vibed with Lex because it just always came off as holier than thou the entire time. It's like, oh yeah, these people have to lay down for me because I'm here to win. And dude, what do you think these other people are here for? Like, and it's felt like, and especially in Final 4 and Final 5, where you start to get wind that Tom may have tried to go after him, and he's confronting him, saying, "Oh, I can't believe you would do this to me," and blah blah blah. It's like, Lex, once again, and it doesn't help that he keeps winning. And so when he's not winning and people are still targeting him, it's like, I can't believe this would happen. Like these are my people. It's like, dude, these people want to win the game. And if they see that you are doing this, why would they not? Once again, we're not going to touch on All-Stars right now. We've got 5 days until that. But it was, yeah, he stirred the pot. I wouldn't even say he stirred the pot. People would antagonize him on accident, not knowing that they were annoying him, and then he would lose his mind. But then there are other moments, or tender moments, like the family video challenge where they do the trivia and everything, and I thought that was really cute. There's a lot of things that make Lex a very compelling character. I would say the most compelling character on this season. I need you to name like an actual negative thing about Lex.
Oh God!
You have to do it.
I think he got too arrogant a lot of the time, and I'll admit
he got too arrogant, or was always arrogant.
No, he got too arrogant.
We got too arrogant.
That's as close as you're gonna get from me.
Okay. I think All Stars would be Monday because I think Pearl Islands is Sunday.
Also,
My math might be off. But I think All Stars is Monday.
I'm so sorry, everyone, for the cooking. I, like Clarence, really wanted to eat the chicken and got hungry.
And speaking of Clarence, I felt so I felt so horrible for Clarence because of how everything started and the fact that Tom just continued to throw hinky votes on him because I've got to teach him a lesson. I've got to teach him a lesson. It's like the lesson of what? Because we don't know what actually happened. At that first episode. But even if Clarence did have a couple cherries and y'all are holding it against him to the point where you're going to vote against him twice, and I don't care what these people say at the merge, they were always going to vote for him, not because he's a challenge threat, because he had not shown himself to be like time really had 2 seasons, but he didn't establish himself as this all-timer. And so everyone goes, oh yeah, we got to get rid of Clarence because Clarence and Lex, once again, it always comes back to Lex coming to him and saying, oh yeah, like I just man to man, like I want to vote you out and this, that, and the other. It's like, what are you doing, man? Like I don't like idols, and I feel like in this moment I would have loved it because it pandering most of the time, which is ironic because he calls out Ethan and Tom at different points during the game for pandering to everyone else. What were your thoughts on Clarence?
I will say, I think that Clarence did open the can of cherries. But you know what? Man is 220 pounds of pure muscle. He's going to carry you through every single immunity challenge straight up to the merge, which you would think at that time, because they're not expecting a swap or anything. Okay, he ate a couple cherries or he ate a can of beans. Calm down, relax. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and I won't bring up what I think was sparking it, but it did look the optics weren't great.
The optics but
Huh?
I think Clarence, a great underrated character of Survivor. I think if you're a Clarence fan, you have to sit down and actually watch this reunion. He is the undisputed MVP. He is hilarious. I I think you get Clarence on another season, and he shows a lot.
Okay, I mean, I could end up just watching it before I start my Marquesas watch tonight. Um, the mystery vote I feel like is what really set Lex off because up to that point, he's just like he's got his folks. He knows he's probably going to target Clarence at the merge. Lex is set. I think when he catches that rogue vote, I think that's what sets something off in his head of like, wow, I'm a threat. And instead of reacting like a normal person, he he reacts impulse, and we hadn't really seen that too much in the previous 2 seasons. Because even when Rich was catching votes early on, he wasn't acting impulsively. After a while, he would like stop catching fish or whatever, but he wasn't overly angry. And Lex is going on witch hunts trying to find who these people are. And that brings me to my next thing of like people, it takes a lot, or no, it takes a little to set a lot of people off this season.
Yes.
Like it doesn't take much to set people off this season. We have a lot of fights. We have a lot for the first time in Survivor history, with the exception of maybe like Kimmy and Alicia in season 2. We get a lot of fights, and it leads to this very contentious tribal council, or final tribal, which I mean, bitter is, those people were pissed off, and they were pissed off for a variety of reasons. I think Big Tom was pissed off at Kim because Kim answered 2 negative questions about him. But like, also, I'm not going to sit here, and most people are not going to sit there and think there's any way that Tom or Frank are voting for Kim in that situation ever.
No.
So if you know that this person is probably not going to vote for you, and you even say in your speech, Tom, I didn't think that you were going to vote for a woman, blah, blah, blah. It's like, Yeah, like at that point, you know what you think you have. It's all right to antagonize what you know you don't have because it's easier. It's easier to do that than to do what Ethan does. What you said earlier of antagonizing Brandon,
We thought
who
vote. We
hmm?
thought was the vote.
Who? Okay, so going off of that, it was very funny how Ethan says, "I think all the women are going to vote for Kim, and all the men are going to vote for me." And then Brandon's a swing vote because once again, the optics are, well, why is Brandon the swing vote? Brandon has, I feel like in that situation, every time I watch the season, I'm always convinced, like, because I always forget who the two votes come from that go on Kim. But I know that it's Kim Powers and somebody else.
Yes.
And I can never remember who the second person is, and I never remember if it's a male or female. And then when the tribal happens, I always remember, oh yeah, it's Brandon because he got his feelings hurt. Kelly and Ethan brings this up here is I was surprised too that Kelly went with the pick a number between 1 and 1,000 question, just based off of everything we had seen of her. So, what were your thoughts on Kelly this season, and what did you think of her question?
Again, another one like Clarence. I think Kelly was really the first of her archetype of this young strategic woman. We had other women like talking strategy, obviously, in the first two seasons, but she's the on the much younger side compared to all of those people. And uh, again, a shame she hadn't been brought back at all. I think she had a real knack for the game, and like you said, and like Ethan said, shocked me that she asked a question like that, given the passion that like was evident in her gameplay that she had for the game of Survivor. And I know she would have been someone who'd been pissed off if she was sitting there and someone asked her.
Someone asked her that question. And it's crazy because she was one of the. I think she was her jury speech was those are two people that she didn't want sitting there, or she surprised her sitting there. I'm like, well, going through my head, who did you want sitting there? Because I'm going to assume you didn't want Lex there. I'm going to assume you didn't want Big Tom there. So I'm assuming maybe Kim Powers and T-Bird. I would assume that would have been her ideal final two in that situation because I don't think she would have really wanted Brandon or Frank or any of these people. Yeah, Kelly's, and we're gonna when we get to the end and we're talking about, oh yes, one Survivor 50, who would we want? I do think that Kelly is one of those people that like has gained a very large fandom throughout the years. And this is a topic that has been brought up I think twice in the comments. Yes, it is kind of like Big Brother this season because they are living in such close quarters. They don't have to sleep on different sides of the beach. They're living, and we talked about this last night, where this is still the part of Survivor history where it's like, hey, let's see if we can kill our players because that's what the people want to see, right? The people want to see them surviving. They don't care about the game stuff.
And it definitely lent to why this was a much more tense season. Obviously, Borneo, Australian Outback, there are big fight moments. We have the "Don't you wave your finger in my face." Obviously, everything with Wigglesworth and Sue Hawk. But this season didn't have as high highs when it came to, I think, tension as those ones. But throughout the entire season, episode after episode, just continuously moments of tension, of fighting, bickering, snide things and confessionals. And I think that's another thing that always drew me to Africa when I was watching is although the strategy wasn't what we see now, I think it was way more ahead of its time in
It was
that.
very fluid. It was a very fluid. I mean, there was still like that trio, but like it went. It wasn't a pagonging. It wasn't a pagonging at all. Yeah. And I would going off of that. Yes, they dropped back from 42 to 39, and I think that's why the finale this season was I actually really love this finale, and especially coming from Australian Outback. But this is another season where they just kind of put them in a situation where it's like, hey, let's see if these people can survive with mush and lions circling their camp for 39 days. Let's just see what happens. We have a question here, and this is a very. I think that. Oh, that's hard.
I think it's
I think
very
T-Bird maybe wins because I think that Frank, even though I don't think Frank would vote for a woman,
Frank would
I
vote.
think Frank would go for T-Bird.
I think Frank would have voted for T-Bird only for the reason that, and again, this is just like what we know now. Whenever T-Bird is talked and shed light on who would win Ethan versus Lex, T-Bird has always said Frank would have voted where I voted. And I think with that, it definitely lends itself to like the respect Frank had for T-Bird out there. So I
Yeah.
think Frank goes T-Bird. I think
Kim Powers goes T-Bird.
Kim Powers goes T-Bird.
Kim Johnson probably.
Kelly goes T-Bird. I think she has 3 locks. I really think it comes down to how the rest of the end game went. Was this where, like, Big Tom flipped on Lex at
5.
Big
You're breaking up there,
Big
champ.
Tom and Kim Johnson? So Ethan didn't give. Sorry, it's my Wi-Fi. Can you hear me now?
You're breaking up, but I understood what you were saying, and I will say, and that's why I try not to fantasy book Survivor because we end up in all types of different situations. Yeah. I do say that, and the problem is it's the Kim Johnson of it all, because Kim Johnson is given a spot in Final 6 and Final 5 where she can flip because she is actually vocalizing, "Hey, I know what's going on here," and T-Bird is saying it. And Kim Powers is saying it's like, hey, we could do something here. And especially there's a situation where they could vote Lex and Lex could go and they don't. And it's frustrating because when Kim Johnson finally wants to make a move at Final 5, she would have to convince either Tom or Ethan to flip. And those 3 are not flipping on each other at all. No matter how much paranoia they have about each other, they're not flipping.
Can you hear
and I
me?
just feel, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
I think she's stuck between a rock and a hard place of the fact that she loses no matter what she does. Whether she flips over, she's losing, or she stays true, she's losing. So I think in her mind, in the days of still like morals and ethics of the game of Survivor, you get your people at the beginning and you stick to them. I think that's what won out in her mind, and it's a shame because it could have been like first real power shift in Survivor history.
And we'll get that in more cases. It's coming very soon.
We'll get that.
Keyword is a total riot, and I tweeted about this earlier because it is, even though it's like the context is not wholesome. One of my favorite moments is T-Bird saying that she's a part of the Mile High Club, and I think it's such a wholesome moment because it's coming from her. But one of my favorite scenes in this season is the Never Have I Ever scene because you get a lot of different people's personalities, including Frank's. You know, they have to explain Never Have I Ever to him, and then he says, "Oh, I've never ever." he's never broken a promise, broken the deal handshake, and everyone just kind of stares at him like, all right, dude, like, cool, this is for fun. And he just tries to explain why he's never done that, and everyone's like, no one cares, man, just pass the bottle so we can keep on going. And then Frank goes out and tries to interact with the Lions, and even Big Tom calls him out on that. It's like, this dude is weird. And once again, and I think that's slowly where it becomes like, okay, yeah, this is how I should be sitting. I should not be liking Frank. And it's right around here where it's like, okay, I don't like Frank. But that Never Have I Ever seen, even though it's fairly short, I really enjoy it. Yes, Frank, pass the bottle already. I agree. Like, just say your creepy stuff and move on. All these other characters, I want to talk. I tweeted this out earlier too. Silas has such a smug face. all of the time, including in his intro, like during the opening credits. He kind of turns to a camera and smiles with this very douchey look, and like I don't skip Survivor credits because I love them, and I have to just continuously watch Silas's smug face smile at me even after he gets voted out. But that leads into the first ever tribe swap. Do you think that there was anything in particular that happened in the first two seasons that led to them saying, "Hey, maybe we should do something different moving forward"? Because we, at this point, we've only had one real pagonging, and that was in season one. Season two doesn't actually have a pagonging. It's more of, it's not fluid, but it's more like this season than the previous season.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to, obviously they're coming off the highest high that the show will ever have with the Australian outback. It's going, okay, how do we keep this fresh? How do we keep this type of viewership going? Because that's always a fear with television, is it getting repetitive. So I think that was kind of a very easy way to test the waters of something new. And I think it obviously paid off very well. You muted yourself. You muted yourself.
Yeah, my mic is muted. One of the first twists that have ever been introduced that works very well to the point where, of a few seasons in the new era, have just stuck. Like, they always swap at some point. And I do think that, like, that it's funny because watching it here, they even have in the trailer, like, make sure you tune in for the first 15 minutes of the next episode for something you've never seen before. And I'm, watching it, it's like, wow, that must, like, at that time I was probably like 11 years old, and I probably thought it was going to be the craziest thing, and I probably was very shocked when that happened. But it was fun watching Silas and in the process the rest of his Gen X buddies kind of lose the power that they had in the game, because I was siding with the boomers in that situation. I don't understand how I was siding with the boomers in the situation, but they just, the way the Gen Xers were being portrayed came off as very lazy, and especially Brandon.
Yeah.
So watching Silas lose that power and seeing his smug face go home.
Like I said, I think that's what makes this such a compelling season, is the first two had a very large element of it being man versus the environment, man versus survival. And that is still prevalent in Africa, obviously. We see it with like the lion circling around, with the bugs, all of that, much more than we would see today. But it really feels like in this season, the narrative is kind of shifting towards like man versus man. Like the conflict is highlighted so much more. And it's really nice. Like I said, it makes it more like the reality television we're used to today. And although might take a little bit more of a step back in the next season, I still think that great showing in Africa.
Yeah, and I think that what hurts Australian Outback this time around for me is the fact that in Borneo there is a very compelling storyline of the Tagi Four against everyone else. Season two, really, there is no, and this is not boo-hooing it, because I will always love season two. It's just there's not a compelling storyline to get around unless you like are sitting there watching it and like, oh, I hope Kobe wins all these challenges. And past that, it's like, okay, yeah, like this is fun, but there's nothing to really latch on to. And in this season, I do feel like, depending on how you are watching it, there could either be a very compelling storyline, or you can compare it to season two. I think this time around, it was very fun to see. I paid a lot more attention to Kim Johnson's story this time around, because she was in a lot of these conversations that in my head she wasn't a part of, and she was a part of this three-person alliance that they made to a four, to the point where Lex Lex is saying, "Yeah, I told Brandon he's number 5 in our alliance, and like he's going to be the person there." It's like, could you imagine someone saying that? Even a couple. I mean, it happened in season 6. It does happen, and Rob.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, it happens in Marquesas. Yeah, it happens in Marquesas too. Yeah,
No, I was agreeing with you. It happened. Like, I was saying the exact same thing. It happens in season 6. Looks at me. Hey,
yeah,
if I win immunity, you'll get to that.
yeah. Well, and watching Kim's storyline this time around, and also watching Ethan's, it was a lot of fun. Like just paying attention to what they're doing, not paying attention to the Lex and Big Tom thing of it all. Big Tom, I understand. I understand. It was 2001. I get it. It's fine. And you know what? Big Tom was very funny, and he was very funny.
He was more PC than Sean,
He was Sean.
Dr. Sean.
Oh, Sean from season 1. Yeah, he was more. Yeah, he does call Brandon a powder puff, and and the yeah, which is so funny because it's like I can't believe that's an actual phrase. But Big Tom, I understand that everyone thought he was wholesome, but like a lot of stuff he was doing, specifically with the women, it's just like, oh my god, like that. It was. I understand context, and I'm not saying, oh yes, cancel Big Tom, because why would I say that? It was just more like watching it now. It's like, man, Big Tom, like, be glad that you were around at this point. Just be glad, because if you fast forward 20 years, this ain't happening, man. Who else? Who else? Who else? We haven't really touched on Ethan. Ethan won, by the way. Ethan won, and he wasn't as big of a social player. Thought.
Again, I know that you're touching on All Stars in a couple days. You said Monday.
Monday, I think it's Monday.
Um, I was actually much more impressed with Ethan's like social strategic game playing from the bottom like he did in All Stars versus him playing in this game. It until the FTC, he didn't do anything actively wrong. Like there's nothing I can point to really say like, wow, that was awful. That could have cost him the win. But it was not the most overwhelming win.
No, but
It was
I think the story that they like to tell is Ethan was like one of these great social winners, which I love social winners. So like I get it, but like at Kim's the one that wins the Final Four challenge where they have to answer questions about everyone. Uh, at Final Tribal, a lot of people bring up the fact that Ethan and Kim, but specifically Ethan, didn't take a lot of time to get to know them, which hearing it now is like, wow, that's crazy because of this narrative that's been preached to us that Ethan was one of these first big social winners. You will never hear me say that someone doesn't deserve and does deserve, because like everyone's boy Charlie
you don't
said
believe
during the 46th finale, everyone that wins deserves to win, and I will always say that. I just remember Ethan's win being more socially dominant than it actually was, and I feel like the fact that he's the last. We are going to All Stars now, but the fact that he's the last winner to survive in All Stars, I do think is a testament to his social game, and because they were getting rid of them very fast in that season.
yes, like you said, Hailed is this great social player, but I think if you really watch the season, I think his strategic chops should get more credit than his social game. He was the one who he was the one who brings up obviously the throw, which is mind breaking. But at the time, like
At the time, yeah.
this is something they've never seen before. But he also at some point during the season in one of the confessionals vocalizes like, hey, I know Lex is out in front. I know he's doing this. That's great. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to just chill.
I'm
I'm
gonna
going to
shut
be,
up. Yeah.
and that's going to get me to the end and win the game. Like
Yeah.
he understood his positioning and he understood the the strategy, timing of it all. And I think that aspect of his game should get a lot more credit than it does, whereas social should maybe get a little less credit than it does.
Yeah, and I feel like the testament to I guess the testament to the social and strategic, I'm going to get to this question in a second. The testament to the social and strategic part is at Final Four, when Kim wins, Lex and Tom vote for each other. Neither one of them
Yeah.
vote for Ethan at all. And I think because both of them felt like Ethan was their boy. Now, would he have been their boy at Final Three? I don't know. I do feel like there is, there could be a case made that both of them, Lex and Tom, may have seen each other as the bigger threat and would have taken out each other then. But we don't get that. I know what happened with the Final Four challenge and everything. Who cares? It didn't happen. Like, it's fine. To answer this question, if Ethan had beaten Lex, would it have been better for? I mean, for me, it would have actually been better because Lex would have lost on the biggest stage, which would have been perfect for me because it would have been good conquering evil. but as far as like, huh?
I don't know who. I don't know who is that.
I think so. I think that in that situation, Brandon, Big
Him as
Tom,
empowers as a swing vote. I think.
yeah, Brandon, because Brandon and Big Tom both vote for Lex in that situation. You don't think so?
If
You don't
Big
think that
Tom,
Brandon and Big Tom?
if Big Tom votes for Lex wins the game.
Wait, so who are your votes for
T-Bird again
Lex?
has openly said.
Uh huh.
I said Brandon, Big Tom. No, I'm sorry, Brandon, T-Bird, and Frank.
Oh, well, there you go. I still
With
would be. I would still hope that Ethan would. Yeah, exactly. I was still glad when Ethan won. Yeah, I was glad when Ethan won. I would have hated and especially once again trying to. I've done a horrible job at avoiding All Stars, but trying to avoid All Stars. Once we know what happens in All Stars and how much of a hypocrite this man came off in All Stars, if he, I'm glad that everything happened the way it did. I'm happy that they went into All Stars and he's telling Ethan, "Hey, I'm here. I'm not here to play friends this time. I'm here to play the game and win the game." And then when his friend votes him out and he's like, "I can't believe you backstab your friend." It's like, yeah, it's his poetic justice almost. Tune in next Monday for All Stars. Overall, I think the reunion's still playing. Overall, watching it this time, and I honestly think because of how boring the post Jerry vote out was yesterday for me, this was a breath of fresh air today. Or well, last night and today. I really enjoyed rewatching this again, despite its flaws. I'm going to give it the same score that I gave Australian Outback. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. So Borneo still in the lead with 4.25. I give it a 4 out of 5, but I would, when I go back and rank everything, Africa is going to come above Australian Outback, which has never happened in my history of watching this show. And I think it's because the second half of the season is actually pretty compelling. Yes, Africa has a better overall story. There is no story unless you care about Colby, which I don't. There is a better story than Australian Outback.
it never reaches as high of highs, feel like, as Australian Outback. Like obviously, like there's more iconic moments you can point to Australian Outback, but it's just so consistent. Like you said, there's those like 2 vote stretch, really, of like the Brandon vote, which is still kind of interesting, and then the Frank vote, which is the worst. I think the most boring episode of
Yeah,
the
I think
season.
everyone votes for Frank there.
But even then, it's like it's consistent.
Yeah. So 2 questions, because I know someone's going to ask in the chat, but I'm going to ask the first question first. Obviously, we've had 3 people come back from this season. Am I mistaken? No, I don't think I am. We've had 3 people come back from this season.
Yes.
Were they the right 3 people? Do you think that any other people should have been brought back? We're not talking about 50 right now. Just besides the 3 that we've had back, do you think that they were the right choices? And do you think we could and should have had more?
I believe for what they brought, they were the right choices. Like, where Survivor was at the moment, especially with the fact that they ended up doing 3 tribes, those were the 3 people to bring back for All Stars. I feel like you cannot bring 2 and not 1. Obviously, Ethan won. Lex, Rob God,
No such thing.
like, quote unquote, but like Fallen Angel last juror, and then Big Tom was like your funny, and he's a great character, one of the most iconic characters. But should more people have been brought back? Absolutely. T-Bird absolutely should have been brought
T-Bird
back.
robbed from second chances.
Bob.
T-Bird actually robbed from second chances. People voted for Kimmy Kappenberg over T-Bird and Monica Padilla.
Coach has said on record he does not believe in robbed. He does not believe in robbed, but he does think that T-Bird has been robbed. T-Bird absolutely should have come back at some point.
Yeah.
She was a star. She was incredible. And like I had said before, I would have really liked her, and even I wouldn't have been mad at a Clarence return at some point. But T-Bird, head and shoulders above the rest, should have played another season of Survivor.
We need a Frank return.
Okay.
No. All right. First question. Yes, I am getting like 8 hours of sleep. Yeah, this is real. Like, it's going by very fast, and like it's gonna pick up when it picks up, and my life is gonna go to hell. But right now, it's been very easy. I go to bed around 1 a.m. I watch the first 3 seasons of the season that I'm starting, so that when I start the next day, I don't have to watch as much. So like everything is good right now. Yes, that was a very cute scene of first T-Bird singing Tomorrow from Annie. Clarence trying to cut a deal with her, and she saying, I don't believe you. You're lying to me. You're trying to trick me. And it's so adorable because it's T-Bird. And it's funny because we go from that scene to her saying, I'm a part of the Mile High Club. I think T-Bird is in her 60s now, because she was early 40s here. She was early 40s here. So I would say she's in her 60s now. As far as season 50, now every episode so far that I've done this, I've said I don't think anyone from pre-33 is going to be on season 50.
Agreed.
Oh shoot. Marquesas has started on my laptop. Oh, my thing. Okay, I've paused. Marquesas started. Let's say they bring back people from pre-33. Knowing this is 20 plus years ago and whatever, is there anyone that's either returned already or hasn't returned yet that you are like, yes, we need them back for 50?
There's no one, oh my God, we need them back. There really isn't. I think I completely agree with you that they're not going to bring anyone back pre-33. If they do, I'll be shocked.
Yeah.
I think if they bring back anyone, again, it would be Clarence.
Oh.
I think, given the diversity quota as well. I think he's someone who's also kind of gained a little bit of a following. I think people have appreciated him more as time has gone on. And I think, like, given that, he makes a great returnee.
Mine would be Kelly. If they were to do something, I would say Kelly. I think that Kelly is another person that has a very. You would say what?
Sorry, I said I was going for most. I was going for more real, like most realistic, I guess, is where
you would say Clarence over. I guess yeah, that's fair. When we talked about Borneo, we did bring up Jervis. I like for Borneo. I think we decided that Jervis wouldn't be the worst option, even though he has already returned. It'd be cool to see him a third time. Of the 3 that have returned from Africa, I mean, we've already gotten Ethan 2 more times, and he almost died the 3rd time. I'm not in any rush to see Big Tom in 2024, and I'm not really in a rush to see Lex ever. No, in 2024.
We'll say my sleeper pick. We talk about cult followings. We can't go without talking about Jesse Camacho.
Yes, I know. I was waiting. We were gonna leave that alone there. So 4 out of 5 is my official score. What is your score for Survivor Africa?
For my sentimental reasons, 5 out of 5. It's my favorite season. If you put a gun to my head and told me to rate it just based on the quality of the show, I would probably slate it at a 4.25. I'm someone who really enjoys the people aspect of Survivor a lot. So I really connected with the characters, and I feel like that's why it just resonated with me a lot on that watch.
Okay. Yes, we did hear that Tony. So it's funny because I think 2 days ago he put on his Instagram that he had landed in Scotland, that he was going to be chilling there, and then it was announced today, rumored on Trader Season 3, Tony, and I'm like, well, I feel like this might be a ploy because why? I feel like you would have to sign an NDA to say, hey, don't tell people that you were here. And so all of a sudden it comes out Tony might be playing. That is probably why he reacted, because his social media hasn't been open since Winners at War, which just so happened to be happening around something else happening in America, and that was a whole can of worms. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up there so that I can start mark. Oh, I have something to do from like 9 to 10, so I'm gonna start mark cases around 10. We will be back tomorrow night, hopefully around 8:30. And then that leads into Thursday, which is Thailand, which is not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun, people. Just spoilers. But Julia, thank you so much for joining me. We'll have Julia back when?
Next week. I think you'll have me back on Tuesday.
Is that for Vanuatu?
You will be seeing me back for Vanuatu, and then back again in I think twice next week, actually. We see me twice. I love old school Survivor, if you can't tell.
So we'll have Julia back twice next week. But thank you for coming on this time. And thank you everyone in the chat. It's been fun. And I will see you tomorrow for Survivor Marquesas, another one of my favorites. Until then, we will see you guys on the other side.